Welcome to the world of architectural accents. Today we're going to be installing a French marble mantelpiece the correct way. We've put a hearth in already, and if you look at our previous how to install a stone mantel, you'll see how we deal with hearths. This is Italian slate, and we are measuring for the center of this firebox. We will be marking the center on both the top of the opening and the base as well. We're going to install both of the legs of this mantel, and we are going to be working from the center, measuring the apron and seeing exactly where each leg is equidistant from that center line. We're putting on the apron. To double check it, we'll be checking the level. We'll be checking that all joints are smooth and everything is as it should be, dry. And if we need to tap the leg in, whatever we need to do to make sure that the return and all joints are even and smooth. At this point, we mark the outside with a pencil. We'll mark the inside against the wall with a pencil, and then we're using this blue masking tape to mark the outer outline of the plinth blocks on each leg. Now we're marking a straight line between the insert of the leg and the apron in order to make, as you can see, these marks on the points that we will be putting in copper wire to join all the pieces together. On the back of the upper side of the leg, we are now drilling a hole to take the copper wire that's going to secure that leg to the wall. Here we're drilling another hole in the insert, which is on the left-hand leg of the mantel. This is on the bottom of the plinth block on the leg of one of the sides. And this is on the other. These two will be held in place with a short earth wire, copper earth wire dowel in each case, that'll go into the hearth. This is the one on the bottom side of the return of one of the legs. We're now drilling the holes in the top. Now these holes have got to have channels because that copper wire is going to be compressed and it's going to go into the wall and get fastened, and it's going to be fastened between the leg and the apron. So in both cases we have to cut a channel that stretches from one hole to the other in the case of the apron and the insert, and one hole to the wall in the case of the leg to the wall. And this is the other half with the apron upside down that we're actually drilling into, which again gets a straight copper dowel. See, now we turn the right way up and we are inserting the channel, having drilled a hole on each side. And as you'll see, this will line up with the leg and we'll have a U formed out of that copper earth wire to hold those parts together. This is the copper wire that's going into that slit. And that's copper wire going into the leg on the bottom, and now the copper wire going into the leg on the top. And that's one that's going to be received by the apron, which is on the face of the mantel, so that's going to end up being a U in shape, whereas of course the one on the slit will end up being straight up, both above and below on the plinth. Now we're marking the hearth. For the first marking was for the side of the return of the leg to the hearth, and now we're marking the center of the plinth where we drilled a hole in the bottom of that leg, and it's going to line up with this hole, which is in the hearth, and be joined with one of those straight earthwire dowels. We're going to do this for both legs, of course. Now we're drilling for that hole. This is Italian slate, which is quite soft, so you have to make sure that you keep it clean. So vacuum and water and anything that you can do to make sure that you're not scratching it is good. Now we're fitting the dowels that go in first, the plinth on the left, and then the one we're cutting now is on the return leg before it hits the wall. Everything should be done dry. So now we're fitting that to make sure it fits perfectly and sits inside that masking tape and lines up with the line on the wall, both on the inside and the outside. Dowels now are inserted in the leg to receive the apron. Make sure that everything is smooth, everything lines up. And we shim where we have to level it. This will all be dealt with plaster. Always install with plaster, never with concrete, cement, mortar, grout, silicone. Always with plaster when you are dealing with French marble mantles, or English for that matter. Checking the level as you go. And then cutting the earth wire connection and looping it so that we can screw that into this concrete header which is above the firebox opening. Sometimes it'll be into brick, sometimes it'll be into steel, and sometimes we have the luxury of actually building it into a wall as we go, but in this particular case we're going to screw it to it. We're drilling, and this will take a tap con. Now for the plaster. Quite a soft mix, but it's got to be nice and thick but creamy. So don't overdo the water on this, and mix little amounts as you go. And make sure it doesn't become too dry. Put down the bed to receive one leg and then the other, leaving those shims in place. Doesn't matter how thick the bed is, it'll all squeeze out. Rest against those shims, and we can tap it down with a mallet until we get it where we want it, and then clean off the surplus. And this would happen on both legs. Always making sure that the leg finishes up level and plumb, and the guide of that pencil line on the inside of the leg that we made when it was dry. So now we're buttering up the inside slip and mounting the apron to one side and then the other side, and as you can see the plaster is coming out a little bit, which it should, because we want it to be nicely filled, that joint. We're tapping it a little bit to make sure it's in place and everything is level, and when you run your finger down it, it should be smooth. Now I'm going in now to plaster up that back to make sure that the joint against the wall is filled, and then as soon as it's filled, that screw can be tightened up. And I very quickly, you might notice, I'm cleaning that hearth to make sure all is good. We're checking angles now, we're checking levels, we're checking its plumb. And that's going to be for the inside slips and roof, which will slant back to the box, and the roof will slant from above the apron, about half an inch above the apron. and that'll go back to the top of the box, and then the side walls will go from a 1/4 or 1/2 inch or so from the back of the inside wall of the mantle to the face of the firebox. So we're cutting that angle now at the correct height, and this will be where the roof will end up resting on top. The longer end, of course, will be on the back side of the leg or each leg of the fireplace, and the lower part will be to the firebox opening. This is a diamond saw, just taking it very gently to make sure that we don't fracture or eat any of the smooth edges. We're going to fit that again dry to make sure it fits, and as you can see, it's going to that inside wall. We're laying it over about 1/8 of an inch so that you don't see that joint if you're looking at the fireplace. So it's 1/8 of an inch out. Putting a filler strip in here, which makes it nice and secure to the back wall on top of that roof. Now that the plaster is clean on the legs, we're going to chip that off while it's drying. Any gaps that are in it, we can go back and moisten a little bit and fill with another slurry of plaster. Clean up the mess again, vacuum, vacuum, vacuum. And meanwhile, I am putting a block on the bottom of the hearth, rather on the top of the hearth, but the bottom where the leg will meet the hearth, and I'm putting it on the back side of that leg, which gives it a support that it'll rest against. So when I place it down now, I'm going to put some mastic on it, and you could put epoxy or whatever, as long as it's black. And I'm going to rest it on the line that I've made down there. Clean up the residue, put it behind, get it behind. Then following this, once it's set, I'll do the other one, which will give this one time to dry. It's pretty quick. So I'm smoothing this off now, and then filling it with a plaster slurry that goes from the wall, the back side, inside wall of each of the legs, and fills that void between that and that block that I put down, which means the block becomes a backing for those returns to go in. So I'm just cleaning off the face of that block. Now I'm going and putting a little bit of that, this time black, plaster. So I've tinted the plaster black, and I'm putting that on the inside so that when I squeeze that in, the joint will be perfect, we hope. And then cleaned off, it'll squeeze out the surplus, and you just need to make sure that you've got damp sponges that are clean. Water needs to be cleaned all the time, and that you've got lots of paper towels to make sure that none of the black has a chance to be absorbed by the white statuary marble. Taking this point of smoothing out the hearth at the same time to make sure that's done. Now we're damping down what will become the roof of that insert, and we're popping that roof in, on a bed of that black tinted plaster, and then I come back behind and fill the top gap with the same plaster. And the sides and the back face all gets filled. And making sure that there are no gaps. And then just with ordinary plaster, I'm coming back to make sure that we've got a build up behind the joint between the apron and the side leg on both sides. And any extra plaster, I'm just making sure that I've got a build up on the roof so that I have that joint between the roof and the slips, which is ostensibly black, but I might as well just give it a bit more. We're coming in, putting a little bit more in the front joint of the apron that we put in with a very trowel there. And then we'll be coming back after I've done the same on the legs. Coming back, cleaning that residue up with a damp sponge, and we're setting up the bed now for that mantel top. A bit of plaster here and there. This all gets squeezed out, so just need to put a fair amount, but not too much. Centering it, tapping it down, and as you tap it down, it'll squeeze plaster out. I'm making sure plaster is in. All the gapping there, that it's sitting nicely. And then sponging off any plaster that's squeezed out. If there are any gaps, you can pop a little bit in with your finger. And use anything, wood, matchsticks, shims, whatever you've got. Just don't use anything metal or it'll scratch the alabaster. Just making sure it's all clean and perfect. Come back and get that little piece off. Yes, there we go. And then we'll clean it all out. Clean the whole mantle. And basically you have a mantle installed with the firebox return that's perfect. And all that remains is for the carpenter to carry on the baseboard into it, paint the wall, and you have an installed marble mantle.